now.
So I will call the meeting to order. We did get a whole slew of minutes. I'm not sure if everyone's had a chance to review them.
I've gone over them.
I was able to go over 3 of them, and I have a couple of questions and a couple of comments.
All right.
Okay. George, were you able to look at them at all?
I looked at them briefly, and if everybody else likes them, I like them too.
Okay. All right. Hey, John, welcome. I see you just signed on.
Oh, great. That's good.
Okay. So if there's, well, let me see what we have. So I guess we've had enough folks review them that we could motion to approve.
Well, Jen had a suggestion, I think, or a question.
Okay.
We could do it after the motion if you want, like, you do a motion, then you say, has anybody got any?
I second the motion.
Okay.
All right. Are there any discussion on the minutes?
Yes. On October minutes, number 4, town updates. I don't know how to quantify where this is because that's a long few paragraphs. It's on the second page, about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines from the top. And this is a curious question. Ruben said, I'm reading it. Ruben said that the town should look for businesses interested in creating data servers. Max said that he and Bill would be looking for businesses interested in satellite offices to help with the EDA, which can include these data servers. I completely forget what that data servers thing was about.
Ruben, do you want to field that one?
Yeah, sure. So it could probably just be called data servers might be the wrong thing. Something like a hosted service or a data center might be better. It really just means any computer that would have some commercial application, whether that be file backup or, if someone wants to start the Waldo Borough Netflix or something like that. I'm just suggesting, is there a place in town where someone could stand up a big metal building that is full of servers? And when you do that, think of servers like utility. They can do any number of things. What you need is a space for a large building, 3-phase power, access to your basic stuff that you'd have in any business. And like a loading dock where they could bring computers in and out. As far as what the computers do, it could be an almost endless list of things. This town is very, we have a lot to do, but we're data rich. If someone wanted to turn up a significant commercial operation here, we've got great power. We've got there's a lot of potential in the pipelines we have. There's nothing you couldn't stand up here. There's nothing you couldn't stand up here. The only issue we'd have is weather.
So here's what I think about it. I think that's a grand thing for us to keep as a prominent idea on our list for types of businesses we might like to attract or help create.
There's 3-phase power at Sylvania Site. That's
what the paragraph is including discussion about Sylvania. So that's why I was. So this is a great. I don't want us to lose this. The fact that I forgot about it is terrible. I think that's a really, really good idea.
So for the minutes, I would, just because of time, I would just be fine with people saying what the items are and we can go over quick. Because I think with that section you're talking about, that related to Sylvania, which I think we're going to be talking about a bit later tonight anyway. Okay. So we can just put it up at that point.
And then the other one it's number 8, the downtown plan. You have that I said one idea that I had was signage to guide people to municipal parking. That's not my idea. That was on the downtown master plan.
Okay.
And we had talked when Bill was here and when we were doing the, damn it, what was it? The community, the plan we did, what was it called? What was our plan that we just worked on a couple of years ago, Max?
The comprehensive plan?
Yeah, comprehensive plan. That's where we had started talking about public Wi-Fi ideas.
Okay.
But anyway, just to make sure, that wasn't my idea about it was
The
the,
size, right.
yeah, it was a downtown master plan.
Okay.
In the
And
world
then
of
go ahead.
in the world of politics right now, there's much talk about investing in infrastructure, including this kind
Yeah.
of thing. Who is it
Yeah.
in our group or town that, and maybe it's Ruben, who keeps track of when there's something we should try and jump on?
Yeah, Ruben.
I do my best to keep up on that, and I keep an ear to the ground. The last few catches, if I'm being honest, have been Bob or have been Max, though I have no issue keeping an eye on that stuff and doing my best to report what I see.
Okay.
I just know that what I hear on when I'm half awake listening to the news, but I bet there's people who know all about what our opportunities might be. And we sure don't want to leave anything on the table.
We don't want to, yeah, we really
Right.
don't want to miss this. And then the only other one I found was on the February one, Max.
Mhm.
Number 5 on the town properties under water pump on Route 1.
Right.
It says, Max says the size prevents work from being done. However, the site has potential for extending the utility done West Main Street. Do you mean down West Main Street?
Yes.
Okay, you just got to fix that one. It's DONE instead of DOWN.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
That's all I got.
Does anyone else have any notes for any of the minutes?
I think
I
you
don't.
captured the spirit and intent very well, Max.
And I don't have the March ones completed. I didn't have enough time because I finished those meetings literally at 2:30, and I had a meeting starting at 3, and that started this Tuesday, the first Tuesday. I have meetings from 3 until whenever this meeting's over, so I don't really have a good window.
Wow.
But I will have the March ones ready by next meeting with the April.
Thank you, Max.
Well, we appreciate you getting caught up. Thank you.
And thank you, Max, for the way you do this. It's quite amazing.
Thank you.
Yes, I agree.
So,
All
can
right,
I-
so the
there be-
motion is, oh, go ahead, Max.
nope, you were about to do what I was about to say. Can we get a motion?
Yeah, so with the changes that were identified, all in favor of approving the minutes?
I'm in favor.
Ruben's in favor.
All right, so that's unanimous. So all of the previous minutes are approved with the relevant notes. Just real quick. So Ruben, the idea of a data center is interesting to me because in my former life, I worked with really big data centers, like 20 and 30 megawatt data centers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I worked with, people like DLR, Digital Realty, and companies like that. We did their power systems for them. And it's actually really intriguing. Could Waldo Borough potentially be a satellite data center for someone like Digital Realty or, one of those kinds of companies? So what Digital Realty does is they build a data center and then they essentially rent space to users. So their users could be Amazon or eBay or Apple or anybody, although a lot of those folks have their own data centers, but they'll still lease space. And so that's kind of interesting. I mean, is Waldo Borough central enough, do you think, Ruben, that we could be of interest to somebody like that?
I don't think Central is necessarily necessary. That's an odd sentence. I don't think it matters. Waldo Borough would be a location that's not near other places that are doing this.
Well, it depends what you're doing. If you're doing like financial transactions.
Oh, okay, that's true.
Then proximity is really super important.
So not for everything. I guess I'm talking in very general terms, and you've made an excellent point. It's not going to be 100% of use cases. In my mind, I think a lot about data backup and redundancy. Waldo Borough would be a fantastic site for a tertiary backup location or something like that. Or maybe an ISP in the area needs a large building to build out their capacity. it could be any number of things.
Would it be something that would be able to serve to improve the quality of some people's, I mean, I'm thinking of doctors and people who want to download x-rays and things, work from home stuff, or people who do analysis for hospitals and other places, or is there any way that it might serve as a repository, or I don't know exactly how data centers work, but could it improve what?
Well, it could, because the doctor could be connected to the data center. So the data center could serve the doctor, and that could speed up, that could potentially help him in terms of speed or downloading or whatever. And the office that he works with, or the hospital he works with, already probably has a data center somewhere. But if someone like Digital Realty could provide a service for that hospital, they may be interested in that. So it's possible.
The building that Seth rents out space in, he's very oriented toward these sorts of things. Is this a big building, or is it part of a floor of a building like his?
Ideally, it would be its own standalone structure. When you're talking about the building Seth has, anything he did in that range would ultimately be a small time sort of effort. I'm talking about something where you might have an owner that does things like co-location for companies that host EMRs, or companies that provide reading services. Things like hospitals aren't going to use it, but they might use a company that would. It would essentially become, a node. So if you have a large medical network, like, some of the hospitals in the Midwest, they might have a West Coast, a Mountain Time and like an East Coast data center for failover and for redundancy. So if a meteor hits one of them, their operations still don't go down. This could be its own. We could, if I'm being honest, we could sit here all night and describe all those situations. I would keep it a little more general. In terms of a place that someone can move a lot of power in and out of, and a place that someone can move a lot of data in and out of. And as far as what that data goes to,
but Ruben,
that could be anything. Yeah.
But Ruben, at the end of the day, you've got to have a co-location owner that would be interested in doing that.
Oh, we absolutely do. Yeah. You can't just have a building and have a sign up. Someone would need to own the thing and operate it.
Yep.
I still think it's a great idea.
It potentially, I mean, this is what they do, but typically the real big data centers are like in New York City, they're in Dallas, they're in Phoenix, they're in Los Angeles, they're Reno and Salt Lake City, actually, because that's kind of a nice central location for mountain region. But at the same time, you have little satellite data centers, and maybe Waldoboro works.
Maybe it's something off the map.
Yeah.
I see Bob with his hand up there.
Bob has his hand up.
So I have two comments. The first is, we can't see everybody, and nobody knows whose turn it is to talk.
Right.
It would be nice if there was some structure around that. The second point, though, I want to make is that if we're thinking of taking on Sylvania, and it's not put to bed quite yet, but when it is, or if it is, we ought to be developing a business plan that would accommodate a building on slab that would accommodate the kind of data center that Ruben is talking about.
Yeah.
You've got fiber optic going to the site, you've got 3-phase power, you've got good transportation, you've got room for parking. It all comes together.
Yep, I agree. All right, so all right, so I think that let's move on to
Actually, Jan, I'm sorry if I'm cutting you off. Just because we had Ruben talk a bit, do you want to just have the CTC quick update right there?
Let's do it. Sure, good idea. Ruben, why don't you give us an update?
So we are still waiting on Chapel. That's still the main event. Either today or last night, I haven't the timestamp that Bob sent me. We have a new contact we're going to try over at Consolidated Communications. I'm bringing Consolidated up because that's the company we're waiting on. There's make-ready work that is yet to be completed on Chapel Hill or Chapel Road, Once that make-ready work is done, Spectrum can come in and place their lines and get those folks access to their communications technology. So that's the main event we're waiting on. We're also working on some grants. By we, I mean leaning heavily on Max and working on Store Mountain Road and a couple other connected roads. I believe there's 3 separate grants out. Is that right, Max?
Yep.
Yep. And I don't have the names of those roads other than what's their Store? Was it
Flanders
Noise?
and Town.
Okay. And that's those are the main events going on in the CTC. Other than that, we're looking at next steps. What do we do when we're done with this task? And we're talking a lot about digital literacy, which is going to be important once people finally get broadband, and that will be true for residents and for businesses. And we need to ponder how we're going to, kind of put that together or support it. Yes, Bob.
Was there any movement at all, Max, on Hope Road, or did we decide that that's something that you can't work with?
Charter has told me that Hope Road cannot be included this time.
Okay.
They pointed out how there was that when they looked at it, there's only one resident who would benefit from the extension. So they're going to reach out to that individual privately and see if it's possible that perhaps they can fund the expansion with perhaps a bit of a discount. So
That would be nice if they could do that.
yeah. So hopefully we won't need a grant for Hope Road.
Can I tell the resident that?
You can tell him that Charter should be reaching out to him about seeing if it can be, if the connection can be done without the grant, and there should be a bit of and they'll talk about a bit of a discount to try and for him. But I don't know if he's already spoken to the Charter about this.
Many times.
All right, so it might be the same offer they're gonna offer him again.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. At our last meeting, Bob had raised the question. So we're into the chairman's report now. Bob had raised the issue of promoting and branding Waldo Borough, and I think we said we'd take a little bit of time today to kind of talk about that a little more. So I'll just kind of open up the floor and see if anybody has any additional thoughts or comments.
There's a basic rule of thumb that it's much easier to ride the horse in the direction it's going. If we were to look inside everybody's head within 100 miles, what would they say Waldo Borough is?
Oh, I don't want to ask that question sometimes because, I don't know. Lots of people look down on this town still, and they don't have a good idea of what Waldoboro has for potential. Because
I guess really all I'm saying is that as we think about what we might want to do to name ourselves or to characterize ourselves, if we can start from something that some people would say, oh yeah, that would be much better than saying, we were the home of the Red Sox or something.
Mm. Well,
John has his hand up.
Yeah, I know that I had a homework assignment from Jan at the end of the last meeting to do some research to look into small communities and how they've succeeded at branding themselves. I actually put quite a bit of time into it, and the fascinating thing is I wasn't able to find a case study of a town that successfully did this. There was lots of information online as to how you do it, but really no case study for us to sort of, hey, that's a great idea. Let's follow that model. A lot of the advice that's on there is pretty much, going back to identifying rather than saying, okay, as George said, how does the town see us? More going to how do we want the town to be seen? What's the objective? Who's the audience? Are there multiple audiences? Really, all of those things are sort of the groundwork, and then the work goes on after that in terms of how you would become the brand that you want to be. It's the old adage of fake it till you make it. sometimes is the way that people get there, honestly. But the faking it, if you will, has to be intellectually honest, and there has to be some truth to it. You just can't say, we are the capital for all industry in the world here in Waldo Borough, and have that stick. So I think it really is. It is really challenging for a small area like we are to brand ourselves and to also overcome some of that negativity that is associated with the small community. We all see the character and the beauty of this place, and not all people do, truthfully, because as every place has some problems, and some people hang on the problems more than they need to. But it was really fascinating that there was nothing, literally nothing. I probably in 10 hours, no real I was looking for a case study. I just couldn't find it. So
that may reflect the reality that Maine, probably all towns in Maine are, I won't say segmented, but there's different fractions and factions in a town. And you get to a point where now we're going to another herding cats. I mean,
right. I mean, the closest I could come from my own personal experience was a much larger area, in an area that had that now has much more financial wherewithal, is Newburyport, Massachusetts. Back in the 70s, Newburyport, Massachusetts downtown was abhorrent. It had its couple of businesses, and the roads were not well put together. Somehow they got some sort of urban renewal type of grant. They put in cobblestone sidewalks and rejuvenated the waterfront park and all of those types of things. And now Newburyport is one of the more popular places for people to visit as tourists. And it's thriving as a community where people choose to live. I mean, that's sort of the extreme of a situation. But I mean, they didn't even have streetlights in their downtown, and they put in the really expensive street poles, if you will, with the softer lighting. They really transformed themselves over the course of probably 10 years, but they did it and became a destination. So I'm not suggesting that approach would work here, but from my experience, that's probably the closest illustration that I can come to.
John, did they have like a catchphrase, or did they like come here because we're the capital of this or that?
Nope, their slogan was the Clipper City because of their nautical background. So clipper ships sailed in and out of Newburyport in the past, and they would typically have one or two clipper ship parades come through every other year. I mean, certainly they had the waterfront to their advantage, certainly, which is a huge advantage to have. But they were just considered the Clipper City, and their high school name was the Clippers, and so that was sort of, they weren't really branded as anything other than being called the Clipper City. So, for what that's worth.
All right, thank you, John. Appreciate that. Hey, Bob, what is when the select board asked for this? What's actually the end game? Is it to attract business? Is it to attract people to come live here? Is it to actually improve, the folks that live here, their impression of the town? Like what's the select board really want to gain from this activity?
That's a good question. I don't think it was resolved. I don't think we came up with an answer. We came up with potential things to do, like spruce up the downtown by having a theme color during a particular season, or get back into the artwork kind of thing. But some things that struck me during this conversation, things George said and John said. One was, how do you perceive yourselves? Not just how do people outside of Waldo Borough perceive us. That's one way of approaching the issue. But an easier way to get the information is to ask ourselves how we perceive ourselves. And to take that even a step further is to ask our kids how they perceive us and how they perceive us in the future, what they would like to see as a vision. because I think it's you become what you want to be. You don't become what you are. And Newburyport maybe is a case in point. They had a vision about that, about the city. I've been to Newbury. I'm sure all of us have been to Newburyport. And I didn't know about the Clipper thing, but I was aware of the commercial renaissance. And that seems to be one thing that is fairly typical of cities that come back. They're trying to do it in Augusta. They did it in Portland. Other towns in Rockland has done it. They've revitalized the downtown area and made it something more than it was before. I'm not sure that formula works for Waldoboro because we don't have a definitive downtown area. What we do have, though, is a river. We have a site potentially now that we can use to promote some kind of commerce. We have an industrial park, a business park that is playing a role in defining what Waldoboro is and how it operates. We have farm-to-table farming communities. There's a lot of stuff here that's difficult to get your hands around, get your arms around, but it's there, and it does help define who we are, a rural Maine village or town, depending on how big you want us to be. But we are rural, we're Maine, and we have a lot to offer if we simply figure out what it is that what we want to offer. And I think that's part of the problem. We have to find not what we are, but what we want to be.
When I was in 1977, when I wanted to move to Maine more than anything, and I came up the coast, I'd been visiting Maine since I was a kid, but the truth was that Waldoboro was as beautiful as the towns on either side of it, but much less expensive. And the evolving, and by the way, the eel company people seem to be back with forward motion, but we are a town of people who live and work and enjoy the town. I mean, it's a working community. I'm not sure how it's a good place to live and die. I don't know. That's probably not a self.
Probably not the best slogan of all there, but
you might want to leave that last bit off.
Yeah, but you're absolutely right. I had the same experience when I moved to this area. I looked at the communities around here. I found Waldoboro to be beautiful and, quite frankly, an affordable option for myself and my family. In terms of marketing yourself, though, it's another tough marketing place to say, come here, we cost less than everybody else. Unless you're marketing to a business, right. Unless you can say your business costs are going to be less here. You're going to be able to settle in town and buy a reasonable home for a reasonable price. I mean, that's attractive to the folks from outside our community, but it's, I think
John, there's nothing romantic. There's nothing romantic about that.
Right, but marketers always make things romantic, right? I mean, we find a way. But the thing that I think is really the toughest thing to do now is to try to better understand what the objective of what it is we want to do or the selectmen would like to do, and defining the target audiences and how diverse they are, and then looking for some sort of commonality across that. And that, to me, that would offer a place to start. And if there's no commonality whatsoever, you've got even more of a challenge.
I love that. I think that's exactly right. So Bob, it seems to me that what we would want to do is go back to the select board and ask a very specific question, which is, we understand that branding of Waldoboro is important. Our question to you is, who are we branding it for? And what's the purpose of the branding?
Yep. A slogan just came to mind when George was talking, actually. Maybe we're the town that works.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good one.
And you can play off that in many different ways.
I love it.
That's a good one.
Instead of a town of the five-masted schooner, we're the town that works at so many different levels.
I love that, Bob.
Okay, so Bob, the question's still the same.
Yep.
So that's a great branding. Who is the audience for that branding?
Well, the audience as diverse as the town is. It's up to those who represent the segments of the town, I think, to define themselves and to meld themselves into that idea that we're the town that works. And
So,
you always work better when you're working together.
yeah, and I think that would serve, because Bob's right about we have such diversity, which is, I think it's one of our strengths. The other thing that's interesting about people who come to Waldo Borough, very much a self-selected group of people who come very much on purpose for a variety of reasons. One has been, I mean, look at some of the new businesses. I mean, they've come here for the land, for the food, for the farms, for the trees, the recreation. They've come here for the fish and the maritime. They've been very specific. I mean, we are a town who really lives in our land, in a sense. We eat from our land, we recreate on our land. We're very much love our land and our river, but it matters to the people who are here. Even the artists come very specifically. So I find that interesting, actually, that people are so purposeful about.
I will take that back to the select board, Jan. That's a good question to ask.
Mm.
And I think this conversation has really kind of helped to encapsulate and give direction to where that might go.
While I'm always struggle with stream of consciousness slogan types of things, I think what you hit on here is a slogan or a brand or a place that could mean something different to every single person. And if you really don't know how to define yourself, you leave it up to the people who are looking at the brand to find their place within it.
Yep.
And that certainly makes it a heck of a lot easier in terms of the branding process.
That's actually kind of interesting.
Well, one of the other things, and my partners who live out of state make this reference quite often, that one of the things that is true about a lot of Maine, but certainly here, is we are connected to our physical location, our natural resources, whether it's seaweed that's behind my head or fish or clams, but it's not like we're bringing in transistors and assembling them into phones. I mean, we're working with what we've got around us. And I'm not sure how that turns into a slogan, but I think
Maybe like connected to the land or something like that.
yeah.
I like that.
But that is true compared to other states and certainly other towns.
But even that, what you've just said, George, applies to the opportunities that Sylvania presents, for example.
Yeah.
It's all there.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of interesting people enough to grab it and run with it.
Yep. There's a lot of innovation going, a lot of aquaculture innovation on the horizon up at the business park. I mean, that's not a slogan, but it's true. We got some innovation going on that I'm watching from the side.
There's
Hey, Bob, how out of the box can our thinking be?
What box?
Yeah, exactly.
So let me give you an example. What if we said, let's say we wanted to be the five-masted schooner. Let's say that is going to be our branding. We're the five-masted schooner capital of the world. And we're going to take that Sylvania piece of land and turn it into a park and a museum and build a five-masted schooner museum right there. I mean, can we think down those kind of way out of the box things?
Yeah.
Or is that or do you think that's too much?
I don't think anything is too off the wall or too much of an outlier. That's what gets people thinking. That's what inspires them to come up with ideas.
There's the Coral Cressy disintegrating into Bremen, Long Island's mud right now. For years, I've been saying we should either get or make one of the ribs and put it as a thing you drive under on the way into town. You go into Camden, you go into that funny little sign that was in Peyton Place. We could have a
some type of entrance like that.
But I mean, this thing, I mean, if you're going to start edging outside the box, Yeah, there's all kinds of ways you could be memorable. I mean, I'm thinking back to when I used to drive up the coast as a kid, and you remembered certain things you always came by, and you said, "Oh, here we are. I remember that." You know.
Desert of Maine.
Yeah, well, yeah, into that.
The only thing that I would suggest in terms of the box is the only thing that I would like to see restrict us is the focus on what our goals and objectives are.
Yeah.
You know, who is our audience? Who are we trying to attract? For example, people from away. The first time I heard five-masted schooner was when I was on this call. So, you know, for somebody who hasn't lived here his whole life, or even 5 years, that would not be a selling point for me, or wouldn't make me choose to come here. I just think we need some direction from the select board as to where we want to go, and a little bit of better definition as to what the goals are. And then I say open up the box and be as creative as possible.
I love it. You know, there's something I've learned is that there's grant money out there for really good ideas. And it's amazing. Like, you know, you read about some, and I'm involved with a food bank, and we've been able to raise thousands of dollars for the Waldo Borough Food Bank just by coming up with good ideas. And I don't think for a moment that there aren't ways that there's state or federal funding that we could bring in for a really good idea for Waldo Borough. And we just have to figure out with the direction of the select board exactly what that is.
We were looking at the Pingree grant today at Maine Health from Shelley Pingree's office at Lincoln Health, and wondering if there was a way to fit our potential Waldo Borough project into that discussion. It appears to not be a bricks and mortar type of grant, but there may be sort of a backdoor to it. So our folks are looking at that, but you're absolutely right. Depending on how it is you define your direction and where you want to go, there is grant funding out there for many things.
One of the things we talked about a number of years ago, and I'm saying this in the context of there seems to be a pending commitment to spending money on infrastructure, literal and sort of figurative, but we've got railroad tracks, and we talked about having a siding up there where people would stop and on their way to Rockland. It sounds like Amtrak is going to go to Rockland.
Yeah.
I mean, the real suggestion, if it's a suggestion, would be to keep our ear to the ground on things that we might have opportunities related to infrastructure commitment.
Right.
Yeah, I love it.
One other
Good.
One other thing I might bring up, and this is something Ron Phillips has been talking about since I got to know him, that we get a group together that thinks seriously about putting a development corporation together that would actually raise, leverage, invest money in particular projects. It harks back to my childhood. We lived in a town in northern Minnesota. The iron ore ran out. It was gone. World War II pretty much exhausted the mines, and you could go for the low grade taconite, but you still had a lot of industries that left town. A lot of jobs walked away. A lot of blue collar folks were in really tough shape, and so they formed a local development corporation. And the specific objective of that entity was to set aside an area of town where you could bring in larger companies. They brought in Northwest Airlines for put in a maintenance facility. They brought in a Chinese company to make chopsticks because they had a lot of wood in northern Minnesota. Stuff like that. That actually, over time, it's not something you do overnight, but it evolved and it worked. I don't know if that's what we want to have Waldo Borough become. But
I believe that's how Sylvania got started, was with a local group.
Well, that's how the button factory got started. Yeah. Waldo Borough has a history of the business people in town. There were several. In fact, the money is probably still somewhere from the most recent corporation that the town created, which was an investment in the town, specifically to develop business and jobs. And townspeople bought shares at a very reasonable rate in that. And there are people who still have, from the families passing it down, the share papers in their families.
Yeah,
so it is part. Yeah, it's part of our history to have done that. There's a lot of stories about how that happened.
I think that's how Waldoboro Bank started, was a group of local people said, let's
Mhm.
build a bank.
Yeah. I think a development, if Ron can advise on how to fund that, Bob, that's an interesting thought for, the future. It's a long-term thing, but
The thing is to get a core of people together who are interested in following through with it.
mhm.
Well, and obviously, Bob, if you can get a group of people to put their own money into something like that,
Yep.
then there's usually other monies available that'll match that or improve on that. So the challenge always is, can we get, enough, townsfolk to put put the money into the pot.
It would be that plus grant money and stuff. Bodenham has been running a small organization like that is I believe it's a private nonprofit, and they have specifically set themselves up to offer small loans to local business people and farms and so forth for projects and things like that. And they actually have a great website, Facebook page. Very interesting.
I really like that idea. I do. It's a good
Mm.
idea, Bob. Jen. All right, so let's move along. So that's great. So Bob, you have the action item of going back to the select board and getting some more focus in terms of what the actual intent and direction is. And Max, that takes us to the town update. You'd mentioned that there was going to be an amendment to the TIF because of the Controversy Lane solar project.
Yes. So I think I mentioned this in February. The Controversy Lane solar farm was approved by the planning board in January. They're right now working on their conditions. This includes a road maintenance agreement with the residents of Controversy Lane, Sunset Ridge, and Stagecoach, which is the biggest upheaval. They also have, Sincarfa also has to submit a decommissioning plan, logistics plan, a few other items just to show that this is going to be a safe construction period as they are making their site.
Mhm.
Long story short, I don't expect them to have this site built by the end of the month when the current TIF year is up. So what I would like to do is, assuming they do start their construction or at least get the building permit filed by June or July, what I want to do is aim for a November timeline of placing a TIF amendment on the warrant, simply stating that we want to include the current parcel that the Controversy Lane solar farm will be located on, and we'll capture the value as that land value is increasing over time. I asked the Maine DECD if this is a common thing that has happened. They have given me some towns that have done this in the past, so this is not something out of the ordinary. I know Daryl has been a bit worried about how this is going to be like valued because the state has a weird mechanism for how they calculate it. So I'm going to reach out to these towns that have already placed these solar farms in their TIF districts just to see how much they saw these solar farms at face value, what it resulted in, whether it's calculating their buildings or calculating just the land value. But with what our current TIF is at right now, we do have enough room to include the fields where the solar farm is going to be made. So we don't have to take any properties off of it.
Good.
And if there's any other amendments people would like to make to this TIF program, then we certainly can do that. I don't think there's anything that does need to be included or taken off. So that's just it. We would have it approved hopefully in November, and then we would have the state approve it by March. And I see Bob has his hand up.
Yeah, I'm just thinking out loud here. Whether we want to, we identified some lands in some of our previous meetings at the town. And we were wondering how those lands might best be put to use. I've been thinking a lot about what I'll call community solar, for want of a better word. And it really came out of the Sincarfa project, because they were asking people to subscribe. And I guess and I talked to Ron Phillips about it, and we had a good conversation. I think what we fell upon, I'm going to get to the point in a second, is the idea that you get a lot more bang for the buck when you invest in the solar project and own it than you do when you subscribe. You get your 15% discount when you subscribe, but when you own it, your energy is free after you've paid off the cost. And we kind of feel and we already have an example of having done that. We put that solar array up on the transfer station, landfill. And in 3 years, if we decide to buy it as a town, the town will be paying zero for the electricity it pulls off of there to run the municipal meters. And the idea is to expand that concept to include community solar, where you attract contractors to come in, do an RFP, have them build the array, let them get their 6 years of tax credits, and then buy it from them, and have the town use the town's borrowing capacity to purchase it and sell the electricity to the town residents and pay it out of that cash flow to the point where you've paid it down. And then you charge a minimal fee for the electricity that produces. To me, that's an attractive concept, and it's a way of using land that you're not using anyway. And it ties into the town that works concept.
Yeah.
Because you're making a broad-based resource available to town residents. And it also ties into what we were just talking about, getting these parcels into the TIF, so that while they're being developed by third parties, their value goes up, and the taxes that we collect from that enhance the town's treasury.
That's a great idea. That also creates an asset that we can then use to attract businesses and families and people.
Yep.
I love that whole idea.
Sorry?
Max, can you send out or make, I'm trying to remember where the defined areas were for the TIF program. Is that a easy sheet of paper you could shoot out to me or us?
Yep. I'll send the document that I emailed to the state, and that should include everything, including the map that include all the parcels.
Good.
Okay. So, Bob, just a quick question. That everything you were mentioning for the community solar, is that something that's for or against what I was proposing just now for putting the Sincarfa solar project on Controversy Lane into the TIF district? Because I don't mind doing that for a community solar project as well. I'm just saying, I wish I did this with Sunrays when they were doing their project, but I didn't. And now with Sincarfa, as long as I know that they do a building permit by this summer, I'll have enough time to put it on the ballot so that at least do it. And if another solar project happens, we can put it in the TIF district. We just need to take something off of it by that time. But I think by that time, we'll have an idea of what might be a good property to invest in.
Yep, and I didn't want to imply that the two models are mutually exclusive. They're not. It's just identifying pieces of land that are suitable for solar development. You can sell them to a private company and they could do the development, or the town could do something with them through a PPA or something like that. But at least you're taking land that is doing nothing right now, and finding a potential value through the TIF district.
They're putting new poles up on North Nobleboro Road and all around down there, taller ones. Is that because of the solar farm or just because those poles aren't big enough?
It's because of Sincarfa, isn't it, Max?
Yes. At least we're talking about close to the industrial park, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, that's Sincarfa. Because once they were approved, they did have to start getting CMP to start changing the poles.
So the array that's up there on the hill that's already there didn't need new poles, or?
Nope.
Oh, wow. Wow.
But now there's a lot more power coming in, because this is probably doubling what Sunrays and the transfer station were putting into the substation combined.
Wow. So we're gonna be a town with a lot of power running through it.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Maybe that's the slogan.
Maybe that's the slogan.
Borough, we got the power.
Hey, Max, do you need us to make a motion to approve what you want to do, or?
At this time, no.
Okay.
I'm just giving an update that it's a town update. I'm just giving that I'm just going to do it. Hopefully by next meeting, I'll have something in paper just to show this is what's going to happen. It's not going to be as long as and extensive as what I had this time. It's just me saying, as Sincarfa is going along, this is what I'm planning to do. This is what I'm planning to do. And this is what my research has shown. I don't even think I'll have a map next time. I think I'm just going to talk to the towns that have put solar in their TIF district and report back to say, this is what those towns have done.
For the sake of communicating, a few minutes ago, you said you could send off a map that shows the current TIF districts. Could you take a magic marker and outline the new one you're considering?
Yep.
Good.
All right. So Max, that takes us to your next item, which is the Sylvania site and the hospice discussion.
Okay. Well, I guess we were just,
Any updates first?
yeah, Bob can give the update on that.
I know as much as you do, Max.
Oh,
We're trying to finalize the agreement with Ledvance. I think we told you last month, we're in discussions with DEP and the Attorney General about how much of that consent order that they can foist off onto the town. And the answer is they can't foist any of it off onto the town.
Right.
The Attorney General has come out and said that. So it makes it even more attractive to the town to own it. The sequence would have to be, I think we're trying to schedule meetings with the attorneys for Ledvance. They have an office down in Portland where they're allowing us to go down and look through all the documents. Linda Veblen's gone come on, Chris Davis, Janet McMahon has agreed to go down with me to look over the stuff. And we'll go in and see what they've got and see if there's any red herrings or flags. And then at that point, presumably, we can move toward a closing and a transfer.
So if anyone has concerns that we are buying something that's going to be a liability, is that just completely categorically not a risk to the town? Is that
Well, that's what we're going to try to determine. The only liability we're aware of at this point is the tetrachloroethylene that's in the water supply. And that is off limits to anybody. I mean, you just can't use the water, period. And Ledvance has to continue the remediation under the terms of the agreement, which I believe is now a public document. We have to continue to allow them access to their wells and to drill additional wells if they feel they need to.
It's their problem.
It's their problem. That's right. If we go in there and do something that's our fault, that's our problem.
Right.
And we looked into pollution insurance to cover us on that.
Hey, Bob, what happens if the town decides to utilize that property and build like a solar array or whatever, and then it's determined further down the road that, oh my God, we got to dig that whole site up? Something crazy.
No, I mean, that could happen. And I think that's probably one of the reasons the discussion between Revision and Ledvance didn't go forward. They couldn't resolve that angels on the head of a pin issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, you go in and you do core samples. If you're going to build somewhere, you go in, you do the core samples, you analyze them, you give them to the DEP because they're going to have to approve it anyway.
right.
Yep.
But if we make a mistake, it's on us.
It's our mistake. Yeah.
Our mistake.
All right. All right.
Well, and that's briefly the thing I was going to ask for the EDC to start talking about, because I think in February or March, I did mention how we've been talking about a downtown or a village master plan, implementing that as part of the town's EDA. But now with Sylvania, Waldo is given a new opportunity for what to consider this funding for.
Yeah.
Ruben mentioned the idea of host servers in town, making Waldoboro this satellite location so that everyone doesn't have to use Boston when they're going online. Jan, you brought up solar arrays, and which ties into Bob's earlier thoughts of a community solar farm. That's something that I think we need to investigate a bit more, just because from what I've been told by solar developers in the area, one problem why St. Carper might be the last one right now is because of that article that was going, or scandal that was happening with CMP about 2 months ago, where they suddenly changed the price for improving substations. Do people remember that? So with Waldoboro, I was told we've likely hit that capacity, and it's going to cost several $1,000,000 to upgrade the station. So we would have to do some research on that. And I'm not saying anything against the solar. I'm just saying that's a roadblock we might have to acknowledge. But I guess that's what I just wanted to say in the town update. When we're talking about Sylvania, I don't know what the select board's going to do in terms of designation, but we do need to start thinking about what should be done with Sylvania so that it doesn't sit there for another 10 to 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we need to figure out ways of getting some money out of it.
Yes.
That's true.
No.
Yep.
Well, and I think that's it. We could
Did
go
you
into.
have did you have an update, Max, on streetlight data you mentioned?
I do, in fact. I wish I had these numbers a week ago because I wanted to share them with the budget committee, but Peg told me that the budget committee was done a while ago, so all my research was for nothing. Yeah, I don't have the exact to the cent, but from what I got, Waldoboro spent $4,663 this past year on just keeping the lights on.
Is that a lot or a little?
For that same amount of money, before COVID, Waldoboro would have hit that number within 3 months.
Wow.
And now that 4,000 figure was what we paid in just 1 year.
So we saved a lot of money.
We've saved $14,000.
Wow.
We saved a lot. In
Good
fact,
job.
Amazing.
just today I was talking with someone from Newcastle, because Damerscott, Newcastle, and I think Bristol had just redone their lights. In case anyone decides to drive through that area sometime soon, so they done that, and I got an email from Newcastle saying it's great that we've done this, but man, these minor issues are annoying. And I cited this very thing, and I said they're annoying right now, but next budget committee, you get to walk in and show them this incredible new data that you've just saved them thousands of dollars for making the simple conversion.
Yeah. Excellent.
Is the money we're saving, Max, more than enough to service the debt?
I don't know the whole story of what's happened now, because back in November there was the whole municipal refinancing of the debt, and the streetlights were included in that.
Right.
Oh,
So that means we now have we have a smaller interest rate than what we originally had. I think we had a lot. It was like, so we should have enough. We should have more than enough, but I can find that information out.
But even once that debt's paid off for the lights, once that's paid off, it's like the solar arrays, it's free money.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, good. Thank you. Max, any updates on AD Gray with the status there?
So I don't know the whole story. Just keep that in mind. I believe there has been a citizen's petition turned into the town office, just stating we want the select board to consider having this go to the voters in June, saying that, just asking if people are in favor of tearing down the building and creating a park. That's all I know of, that these signatures have now come in. I think Marcus is right now in charge of ensuring that there are enough signatures and they're all valid. And then once that's done, it goes to the select board. So, Bob, that might be on the agenda next week for you.
Okay.
Can
So
someone,
haven't we already voted on this?
Yeah, we did already vote on this, but this group wants it to come back to reflect their perception of things.
It wasn't a binding vote.
No, it wasn't, but you know, I still have the same question is I don't understand. I've spoken to a couple of people and they told me straight out, it wasn't about the park for them. They just simply don't want senior housing in town. They don't- They said,
It's a not in my backyard thing.
yeah, they said, we don't want any more people who can't, who don't spend money in town and blah, blah, blah. So that was, because I wanted to hear what they had to say. And that was what the bottom line was.
Well, shame on them.
Well, we're all seniors, just saying.
is the idea that you can have AD Gray be housing and an adjacent park together? Does that continue to elude discussion?
Well, that's what's asked every time. And at the select board meeting, the people who are pro demolition have said, no, the two can't be together, which they're the only group that believes that.
Right. And like I said, at least two people on that group have told me clearly they don't want the building. They don't care about the park. They simply don't want the building, and the park is a good way to get rid of the building.
It would be a crime to tear that building down.
Yeah, I can read the petition to you. I have it here in front of me.
Would you, Bob? Yeah.
There's the petition, there's the article they want, the warrant article they want, and then there's an explanatory note that I'll read to you as well. The petition is, shall the town approve the creation of the 80 Gray Park to be located on the property containing the former 80 Gray School and the adjacent properties located on, and they give 3 map references. I believe they include the parcel between the school and the ballpark, and the little triangle across from the school. So that whole area would become a park.
But there's, excuse me, just say, what you just read doesn't say whether 80 Gray is torn down or not. It's just saying it used to be a school.
That's in the explanatory.
That's the explanatory note. The explanatory note to be included with the article, and we don't know if we can do this or not on the warrant.
Right.
What they're asking for.
Right.
This municipal park would exist in perpetuity and be created without the use of town tax dollars. Creating the park would include removing the former 80 Gray building, removing the obsolete tennis courts, and restoring the wetland and buffer area on the property. It is our hope that in addition to the existing athletic fields, this park will eventually include a gazebo, children's playground, recreational courts, farmers market, and community gardens, which may or may not require private or public funds.
So who's supposed to keep this land and park in good shape? It's not supposed to be no town tax dollars. So who's going to mow it? Who's going to trim it? Who's going to take care of it?
Yeah, good questions.
No.
Again, this is something that's probably just going to come up at the next select board meeting, and I'm hoping these questions can be answered. I don't know what's on the agenda for next select board meeting. I imagine that this is going to be on there, and I'm hoping that those questions can be answered, because I have those same questions. I have a lot more questions.
Yeah.
But just siding away from the citizens petition, because I feel that's going to go down a rabbit hole. For Volunteers of America, we are still in the negotiations with them for the memorandum of understanding. And I know that some people are a bit impatient about that it's still not a public document. However, it is something that this 80 Gray subcommittee has been working on for quite a while. and do want to make sure that what they are creating is something that clearly does outline the town's position, so that it is not a repeat of some past issues, such as when the YMCA was here, because I know that some people still have that bitter memory.
In terms of the process and what's confidential and what's executive session and what's public, logically, you would like to know the details of the proposal or that we have agreed to with Volunteers of America before you made a decision about anything. Is it possible to have the steps fall in that order so that you know what you're comparing if you're thinking of comparing?
You mean
So-
before voting?
Well,
Yes.
and that's part of, I think, where some of the confusion was with the November warrant, because that was strictly a non-binding question. That was simple, a survey simply to the town saying, this is the use that has currently been brought forward to us. Is this something you support? And that information is what allowed the 80 Gray subcommittee to go forward with the negotiations, knowing that this is a possible use people would consider under the right conditions. And that's actually what I'm hoping can at least be done with this citizens petition and have it as a non-binding warrant as well, because if it can, and it does get approved, then we can certainly have it go through the same process as Volunteers of America, where whoever this 80 Gray Park Coalition representative is can outline and negotiate these terms with the town. Because I think by this, I mean, you're right, the terms need to be outlined, and that's why we're hoping an MOU and an option agreement can be ready before there is a binding question asking residents if they are fine with the property being transferred to Volunteers of America, so that by that time, the residents do have the outlined terms of who's going to be responsible, what's their timeline, and what can be done to guarantee that this is going to happen.
Now, in my short time as a resident of Waldoboro, I can't tell you the number of times we've been voting for things, and between the language we're required to use and the voting for the negatives in order to get the positives, and this is just conceivably this is going to be one more time where someone's standing trying to check a box and they're not going to know what the two choices really are, or they're going to think they know, but they aren't going to be what they really are. And it just makes me crazy that the process, which I recognize is confidential, but there's got to be a point where everyone's knowing what the choices are and
Right.
picks the one they want.
Plus, it's not going to be a choice. The way that Max just read it, that's not a choice between two options. That is asking if somebody would support that. They're not even going to see the other option on the ballot.
Well, that's part of if there's going to be a town vote on the future of that property, which it sounds like procedurally, I don't think it has to be, because I think it's within the scope of the selectmen to make a decision on their own. But to the extent that there's these forces rising up, it seems like there's going to need to be a point where the voters make a decision, and it sure would be nice if they were making a decision based on actually knowing what the choices represent.
And it's not, like Max said, it was non-binding, perhaps, what was coming up. So, but the problem is, even with a non-binding, if you don't know what the options are or what you're thinking about it in context, makes it hard.
I've heard all kinds of terrible things about Volunteers of America and vast ranges of numbers as to what it would cost to remove the 80 Gray building. I don't even engage in conversations anymore because, what do you call it, truth decay?
Well, yeah, you got to wonder. I mean, where are you hearing? We don't know. I mean, are people saying bad things about a company, a nonprofit? Do they know for sure? I mean, you never know. This kind of thing is.
All right. Well, I think we've covered this effectively. All right.
Yeah.
I think, Max, do you have anything else to cover, or is that it?
Planning board wise, we have the Grange was approved in March. So there's going to be Dance Mania as a location there.
Nice.
There's a vehicle service place that's going to be at 646 Union Road. And I'm trying to think and Delano's Seafood, people saw in Lincoln County News already.
Yeah.
Delano's Seafood is going to have a massive expansion over at their site. This isn't changing any of their business model. It's just expanding the amount of retail space they have. So that's good on Kendall there. And for April, the only business-related item is the old crematorium at 722 Atlantic Highway. We have a person who has a business in Newcastle where she's planning on opening up a second spot here in Waldo to sell, I think it was like health smoothies and teas. She says she has a huge client base in Waldo and wants to have a location closer to her Waldo clients.
Is that the one on the hill, Max?
Yep, that's the one. Not across the street from the town forest, but it's the next road. It's the next one down. It's the old crematorium.
Well, it's a little office. It doesn't have a smokestack.
But that's what I've been told it's called, the old crematorium.
Yeah, they would arrange to have you
I
burn.
think that's an overstatement of its function, but I'm gonna be wrong. There was a discussion about using a container to make a small drive-in restaurant or something
The
down
coffee
there.
place.
The coffee place. Did that fall apart or what's going on with that?
Yeah, unfortunately with that, so I think I mentioned this during a meeting. Their biggest condition was that they needed Maine Department of Transportation to approve that project. There were a lot of terrible, bad pieces of information that were given, because when they came to the planning board, they were told by someone from MDOT, yeah, this is fine. You can go ahead and do it. No issue. That person was not qualified to give that type of judgment. And that was never in writing. So the coffee can made a bunch of purchases based on that statement. And unfortunately, when the planning board asked for something in writing and they went to MDOT and asking for it, they were met with a lot of, well, you can do it, but here's what you have to do. It's boiled down to the coffee can is not going to be opening up in Waldboro.
And I heard that it's to do with access and where you can turn on and off of Route 1.
Yep. I'd be going into a long thing of why the curbs that they currently have are no longer allowed.
Well, let me save you time and cut to the chase. Does whatever limited them limit all kinds of activities on that nice parcel of Route 1? Can anything be done between Dunkin' Donuts and cars?
Not unless it merges not unless it's an expansion of one of those businesses. Apparently what happened is the owner who owns that lot where the Tucker is and where the coffee can was going to be, because he purchased all these old curb cuts, MDOT looked at it as you only need one curb cut to get on. So all these other ones aren't necessary anymore and you should get rid of them. So he kind of so all those curb cuts should be gone at this point.
So he should have kept the properties in separate names?
Yep. And then there's some state law that needs to be referenced. But if a lot is connected to two different roads, the new access point needs to be from the one that will cause less harm, which in this case, the lot goes all the way to Route 32, which is Winslow's Mills. So the coffee can was told, if you want access, it has to be from Route 32.
Oh my God.
Which was not developed in any way. So they'd have to spend money to build out a road to get to that access.
Oh boy.
And this fundamentally is a technicality because there's always been people getting on and off Route 1 there.
Yep.
Is there an appeal process that says, wait a minute, for hundreds of years, there were these 5 entrances?
The landowner does have the right to appeal, and they've been told that they have that right, but it's not going to happen.
Okay.
And and I told everyone this, it's very heartbreaking when this happens, because everyone was excited to see this.
Yeah.
I had someone just today come into the town office and say, "What happened to the coffee can?" And I said, "It's not happening because of all this." And I said, "Man, I wanted a good coffee place in this town."
So if there was something that was, if Dunkin' Donuts or whoever owns the Dunkin' Donuts building bought some more land where the gas station used to be, if it's continuous land, does that mean there's a chance to put another Route 1 entrance in
For Dunkin' Donuts?
for an expansion of Dunkin' Donuts?
Yeah, because what they would do is cause less harm. So I would imagine MDOT would be all for taking away what currently exists for the Dunkin' Donuts entrance and having it moved over to the end, closer to Tucker Chevrolet,
Oh, well, that's a,
or at least if they still have to keep their curb cuts, it at least means you can have that waiting line go all the way to Tucker Chevrolet and not cause any issues.
yeah. So conceivably Dunkin' Donuts corner property, if expanded and reconfigured, could be a better Dunkin' Donuts with some more activities and no additional actual entrances, just spreading them out.
Yep. I
All
know.
right, thanks. Thank you. Is that it, Max?
It's going to be mentioned at the next week's select board meeting, but Audio Wives is applying for a community development block grant. Their letter of interest was accepted by the Maine DECD. So next week I'm going to the select board asking for a public hearing date to be set, so that, because technically with this grant process, the town is the applicant. We're applying on behalf of Audio Wives. And this grant is just so Audio Wives can purchase some new equipment and inventory. And if it's successful, then Audio Wives will potentially be hiring 3 full-time equivalent jobs.
Wow,
So-
awesome.
That's great.
That's great news.
Say the name of the company more slowly. I don't know who we're talking about.
Audio Wives, the farm brewery that's on
Oh,
Old
okay.
Route 1.
Alewives. Okay. Yep.
Just up the hill.
Yeah.
All right, good. Thanks, Max. John, do you want to give us a quick update on COVID-19?
I sure can. The clinic down in Booth Bay Harbor is just doing phenomenal work. This week, they will vaccinate close to 2,000 people. Actually, 2,000 doses will be delivered, about 1,300 new patients and about 890 second doses. So we have the Moderna vaccine there, so it requires 2 doses. We've expanded to a full day on Saturdays because we've needed to. Our average daily dose this week will be 366 doses per day.
Wow.
With a very tightly run operation. I was there, I volunteer there once a week, and it's a sprint. It's a sprint from the beginning to the end. But people are very happy that we're here. They're there and they're getting the vaccine. It's probably the happiest I've seen people to get a shot ever. So
Yeah.
we're doing well. We have seen a little bit of an uptick in the number of tests we're conducting, as well as a percentage of positive cases. So we're keeping an eye on that just to see what the trend line looks like and whether there's another cause for concern or not. We have been told that we should continue to see a decent amount of vaccine, which is terrific. And as you probably know now, if you're over 16 years old, you're eligible to be vaccinated by us at the Booth Bay Clinic. So we're hopeful that people will take the opportunity to register. There is a little bit of a concern as we get to the younger populations that there'll be a little bit more hesitancy, if you will, to get vaccinated. So we're working on trying to educate folks as to why it's so important. And the phrase herd immunity is an awful phrase that's used in public health, but
Yeah.
basically it means that, doing something for your own benefit and the benefit of others. And the more people who get vaccinated, the better it'll be for everybody else. So
Yeah.
I'm continuously impressed by the work that goes on at that clinic, and really happy that Lincoln Health is a part of, this really good work.
Good, awesome. I'm scheduled for my second shot in Brunswick, which is the Pfizer version Thursday. So
Oh, that's interesting.
Bob
excited.
has his hand up.
Yeah, Bob.
John, how would you regard the recent trends in COVID infections in Maine? I've noticed they either go up or they stabilize, but I don't see them going down the way they were a month and a half ago.
So over the last 3 weeks, in terms of our positivity rate at Lincoln Health, we've seen a slight rise. This last week, however, we saw a slight decrease, which was encouraging, but we're seeing about an 8% rise in the number of cases statewide since when you compare it to the end of February. So from the end of February to now, we've seen about an 8% rise, and we're seeing roughly 6 hospitalizations within our system, not at Lincoln Health, but within our system a day, as opposed to back at the end of February, there were 2. So that's the biggest concern, truthfully, is the hospitalization rate. It's interesting to see. I mean, there's a lot of concern about this being nationwide, the 4th surge, if you will. Our numbers are relatively stable. And the one thing that's really important to note here in Lincoln Health is Lincoln Health has the highest percentage of people vaccinated of any county in the state of Maine. So we've done a fabulous job of getting folks vaccinated. And I think it's telling for us that the people take this seriously and they want to do it. So it's great that Lincoln County residents are taking this seriously. And I think more than 37% of all Lincoln County residents have had at least 1 dose of the Moderna vaccine or 1 dose of the vaccine, and about 23% are fully vaccinated. So
There seemed to be, I guess it's a political element to whether people wanted to have a vaccine shot or not. Has that settled down, or is it, I mean, do you know who doesn't want to have one and what it's going to take to get them?
Yeah, I mean, I hate to talk politics publicly, but that's still definitely out there. There was a letter to the editor in the Booth Bay Register today about how it's unconstitutional to make people wear a mask. So it's still out there, and there are still people who are parroting the phrases issued in the past about why this vaccine is not necessary. I don't know how you convert those folks, truthfully.
I didn't know if the beating of the drum slowing down would slow down the beating of the drum.
Well, it's the drum beat is definitely not as loud as it used to be. That's for darn sure. It's the rhetoric, I think, that we hear a lot has died down as well. I think that the high percentages of people in their 70s and 80s who have been vaccinated in Lincoln County, I mean, that's over 79%. So our older folks recognize the need for the vaccine for their stability as they move forward. And I think, as I said, I think our biggest challenge is going to be, the kids from 16 to say 30, basically because of that feeling of being, nothing sticks to them, they're Teflon a little bit. So we have seen the highest rate of increase in the population of kids who are 20 to 30 lately. That has been the positive. The positive cases have been going up in that age group.
Well, and they're probably the most social.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely true.
Not a good time for me to be 26 years old, is it?
Sorry, Max.
Stay at that table.
Yeah, he's all by himself at the table. So
no, I'm not. I don't mean it, what you're all saying. I'm saying more by the stats John's given right now. It's just.
Yeah, I'm not trying to paint you. I'm not painting you, Max, with a really broad brush here.
I know you're not the one painting me with a broad brush. It's everyone else in my age group who's doing that for me.
Right.
Well, you just stay at the table anyway.
I'll get my shot. Don't worry about that.
Yeah,
we are just I think Lincoln County as a whole is very lucky that the population thus far has taken this as a serious health concern and is stepping up to the plate to get vaccinated. Like I said, our numbers are better than any county in the state.
John, the real crux is going to be when the folks who don't want to get vaccinated realize they can't get on an airplane because they don't have their ticket. And I think that's the kind of thing that's going to push it.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think, you know, for people who are, I mean, it's perfectly adequate for us to say, if you're not vaccinated, you can't visit your loved one in the hospital. I mean, we're still in a position where visitation is extremely limited, but we have
Yeah.
every right in the world to try to protect our folks. And there are going to be a lot of folks like that. Conversely, however, there are going to be the other folks who, you know, are the ones that are being cited by the state for not making people wear masks and not enforcing the state mandates on masking. So there's always going to be two sides of the concern. From the public health perspective. At least I spent 10 years doing public health work with Maine CDC in terms of communication. I'm not sure what the quote threshold is for herd immunity with this virus. But it's like anything else. The more vaccinated, the better off we're doing.
Yeah, yeah.
The
Right.
thing that I've been reading about the variants, from what I'm understanding from the science, is that the more people the virus gets to infect, the more chances the virus gets to mutate. And therefore, it has the possibility of creating new variants. When we lock it down with fewer and fewer and fewer people, it means that there's less opportunity for these variants to appear and then keep circulating.
Yeah,
I don't know if people don't understand the science of that or what, but that's a key thing, because these variants are in other states are pretty rampant in a couple.
Michigan. I
All
got
right.
partners in Michigan.
So we should wrap this up, folks. We're a good half hour over here. The only thing I had under old business was a friendly reminder that we've got those brochures at the town office. So anybody needs a doing business in Waldoboro pamphlet, please do get them. And is there any new business that we have not discussed?
I don't have it now, but it will probably go into next month's EDC meeting. I've been having students from the University of Maine in Orono look at a few different projects in town. I was going to probably share it with the EDC when those documents are made available.
Awesome.
That sounds great.
Awesome. All right, everybody. Thank you. Thank you so much. And the meeting's adjourned.